Hey guys, how you doing? George Anderson back again here with you today with my results from the recent First Beat assessment that I had done. And I got Simon Shepard on the other side of the, you can see the slide here, and Simon's joined me today to give me some feedback on what my data says. So how you doing, Simon?
Very good, thank you, George. Very good.
Now, I'm not as nervous as perhaps I might have been, because I have been through and seen some of this data before, and there's some bits that are very interesting, and I'm kind of keen to get the summarized version of the feedback from you, from me today. But before we kind of get stuck into that, just as a recap, tell us a little bit about the First Beat and what it actually does.
Sure. So we wired you up with 3 days with a monitor. That monitor collected heart rate and accelerometry data, but the thing that makes First Beat fascinating for me is the way it looks at heart rate variability, or the pattern of your heart rate. And that allows us to understand your autonomic nervous system and when your body is under load. Some people call it stress, and equally when it's recovering. So we're going to be able to differentiate between physical load, non-physical load, and recovery or flow.
Yeah, and there's some. I love a bit of data, and to be able to interpret that data, get some meaning from it, and then to make some changes as well. That's really what the First Beat is all about. What you do at Optima-Life as well, isn't it? Is that you give people this feedback, and then there's some suggestions there as to how they can make some improvements.
Sure. So it certainly changed the way I practice, because I have data and I have objectivity. And as we'll find out in the next couple of minutes, we also get stories as well. We try and understand what's causing the data to be where it is at.
Well, let's get stuck in then. What did my data from a few days of recording show you?
Sure. Well, I've sort of picked out a couple of days, and I think it'd be just useful just to really quickly recap, and just you can see the graph at the top there. The green colour is when your body's in this state of parasympathetic dominance or recovery. The red colour is when your body's in the state of sympathetic or load or anxiety or stress or arousal. And the blue colour tends to indicate when people are doing physical activity. Okay, so we can see a bit of everything there, which is good. But I thought the first thing we should pick up on is one of your favourite themes, George, which is sleep and recovery.
Yeah.
So let's look at this right-hand side of the graph, and you can see the blue line that sits underneath here shows that your self-report is you went to sleep at about 11:30, you got up at about 7:30. You've gone straight into this physiological recovery with the green. In fact, you're in a little bit before bed, so really good unwind routine. Looks as if it's evident. So I'm really happy with the sleep on day one. And if we sort of summarize it, we produce figures that show people not just how long they slept for, because you could sleep for 8 hours, but if it's 8 hours of rubbish, well, what was the point? You did sleep for 8 hours. 93% of that sleep time was effective. The line at the bottom is a complicated one to explain, but it basically gives a view of how you've been over the last 3 to 6 months. It smooths data a bit. So this wasn't a one-off. You didn't just put the monitor on and decide to behave yourself. This was a typical day in the life of George. And if we go on to the next day, again, you can see the recovery is still very, very good. There's just where I put that red circle, there was a slight blip at around about midnight.
And,
I
think one of the kids came in.
Yeah, I think we talked it through, and you had a visitor in the night, didn't you? Yeah. So just a little bit of a ripple there, but again, 98 out of 100 we give you for that. This is still really good sleep, so a big tick in the sleep box.
Fantastic. Yeah, I do like my sleep, and actually, I find that evening routine really does make a difference. Having sticking the phone on flight mode. And getting into bed and not flicking through social media, Instagram, because I have done that before, and it just wires my brain, and I start feeling kind of a little anxious, and I know that's not great for me as I go try and get myself to recover and get into sleep mode.
Yeah, and sleep is a habit. So how do we create good habits? And some of the things you described there are obviously really useful in initiating that great habit of sleep, recharge, and recovery. And we often show people there's a big difference between rest and restoration. Some people are good at sleeping, but they're not always so good at sleeping well. But big tip for you.
Thank you. Good stuff.
So, but let's have a look at your days then, shall we?
Yeah.
So the days are quite interesting. So this was a day at work, and the reason I've highlighted that area around about 11 o'clock through to 2 o'clock is we see quite a bit of green. And, this isn't you having a little nap in the middle of the day, or that's what you told me. I think you're doing some coaching or something there.
Yeah, certainly the first block was coaching. I think their 1 o'clock-ish was, I was doing some writing at that point there, which again is something that I really, really enjoy doing. So it's interesting to see the marks of green at those points.
Yeah, and the more I do this, and we've done thousands of days of data, we often see when people are doing things that are closely aligned to their skill sets, their values, in an environment that they're comfortable, with colleagues that they get on with, we often see people go into this sort of green restorative colour during the day. I'd even have people in HR sacking people in that colour because they know in 20 minutes' time this is going to be sorted. So it's quite interesting for people to see if they do get any green during the day. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing to pick out on day one is you did a little bit of exercise here, didn't you? I think
just a short workout. Yeah.
Yeah, you're feeling a bit under the weather, you said, on that day, so you didn't really push it.
Yeah, so I was coming off.
But even with a short workout.
Yeah. So sorry, just to can recap on that. I was coming off the back of a holiday, and the last day of the holiday, I started to feel a little bit sniffy. I think the kids had been unwell, and so this was, I think, the Thursday, and I was just, or maybe the Friday even, I can't remember. But I still wasn't feeling 100%. That's for sure. So I just had to have a short workout just to see how things were going.
Yeah, and I think the other interesting thing is look at the load responses just after workout. These high bars of red, much higher than they were earlier on in the day, and it just shows what a stimulant exercise is. And if that exercise is done close to bedtime, those red bars still kick in. So just a useful thing to respect that exercise, great for our health, great for our well-being, but also it does drain our systems.
Yeah,
and we need to respect it. Day 2. Now this. I think you spent most of the time in the bathroom.
Yeah, not because I was unwell. No, I was doing a DIY project. So this is me stripping tiles off the wall. What I sometimes find DIY to be, it kind of feels almost quite relaxed, even though it's physical, because it's just monotonous. I just I don't have to think about anything. But the data says different, right?
Well, I think you're sort of starting to approach a physical activity workload, but I'm guessing you don't strip your bathroom down every day of the week, whereas doing the coaching, doing the writing is something that's just really common skill set. And so part of the reason for these red bars being high will be physical. Part of it will be, what on earth am I doing? Part of it will be, when is this going to end? And I think the other thing is have a look at this area here just before you start getting into the bathroom. Mm-hmm. There's almost a degree of anxiety, stroke, oh, gee, do I really have to spend my Saturday doing this?
I try not to voice those thoughts.
No, our secret. Our secret. So there's just a couple of interesting things comparing the 2 days. One when you're sort of doing, that cerebral stuff, and one when you're doing the physical stuff. I did think we should have a look at your physical activity. So, as you said, you're feeling a bit under the weather. So we give you points relating to how much health-promoting cardiovascular physical activity do you do.
Not very much.
We'll give you the benefit of the doubt that you're under the weather. On the Friday, you went to the gym and just did some light weights. Is that right?
Yeah, about 20 minutes of a circuit. Yeah.
So you get a few more points there. Ideally, we like people to get to 60 points 5 times a week if they can.
Okay.
But we need to exercise lots of things. We need to increase body mass, which wouldn't necessarily show muscle mass, which wouldn't necessarily show massively on this. But sometimes people do forget your heart and lungs are important, and we need to keep those working too.
Yeah. So on each of those days, I'm pretty sure I went out with the dog, say, for half an hour and walked pretty briskly. Is it because I've got a reasonably good level of fitness that wasn't enough to initiate any kind of cardiovascular response? Or just is that in general not enough to count for exercise, going for a walk for half an hour or so?
Yeah, it's probably the former. So if you're fit, this is about health promotion. The points you score here. If you are fit, you'd have to work harder to promote further. Some people will get a significant amount of points just walking across the office to do some photocopying because they're so unfit.
Okay.
In many ways, those are false positive points, and we're having to educate on that front. But it's all about being a better you. I prefer better than best, but it's all about being a better you on a regular basis.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that there are many disadvantages to being fit. The fitter you are, the more you have to do in order to not just maintain it, but to get those scores up, to get your 60 points.
Yeah, to maintain the level that you're at, you've got to push. So, you can't dawdle with the dog. You've really got to push with the dog.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, sometimes I go out for, I'm going out for half an hour. If I go for a walk or I go for a run, it's still only half an hour. So, and it doesn't, if I go for a half hour run in the morning with a dog, it doesn't really take that much out of me, and I'll still train later on in the day. And, I have often thought maybe I'll just do this every day instead of just going for a walk with her every day. But sometimes I like to just have that headspace, just mooch around, listen to an audiobook whilst I'm walking, kick off the day. So that's part of my morning routine. Just have to get out and do some more training. I am, at least, the irony of this, of course, Simon, is this weekend I'm about to go and do this crazy Frog Graham Round 40-mile ultra swim run. So looking at this and going, okay, I'm not doing so well in the fitness stakes, but I am quite fit. I promise. I do work hard.
No, I believe you, and you'd probably explode our monitor if we put one on you this weekend. So I'm grateful we did it when we did. We also just looked at your energy expenditure. I know a lot of devices look at calorie count and energy expenditure. We've looked at it over a 24-hour period here. And again, I think it's quite interesting to just see that there is a significant difference on the day when you did go to the gym and just do that 25-minute workout or so, and for example maybe the Thursday. Yeah, it's about it is approaching sort of 20%ish roughly difference there. So again, I'm often talking to people about refueling strategies and how you're getting this balance right between what you're expending and how you're recharging from a nutritional point of view. I just put that in there for a bit of general interest.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're always told about things like basal metabolic rate, like the number of calories we need to consume each day just to sustain ourselves. Then you add the exercise onto that. And it's always a rough and ready figure, or sometimes we maybe stand on the Tanita scales and it gives us an idea with a bioelectrical feedback from handheld and feet pads. But to actually get some more accurate data like this, you said that it's pretty accurate, isn't it? The percentage.
Yeah, we've got about a 6% error rate compared to gas analysis. So I think it's probably the best way of evaluating unless you go into a laboratory and get gas analysis done.
So kind of interesting to see that on a normal day without any real exercise, around 2,500, 2,600 is normal, and then in a half hour, 20-minute workout, I can push that up to close to 3,000 calories. Yeah. And then looking at that, I don't normally kind of track my food. I know many people do. It's not something I tend to do, but I've got a rough idea of how much I'm eating just because I have done it in the past. And I suppose that probably would balance out around the 3,000 calorie, sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less. And of course, normally I am a bit more active than I was over these 4 days.
Yeah. So it is a balancing act, isn't it? And you have some people who have very low basal metabolic rates, some people who have very high basal metabolic rates. That will impact their weight. But actually, most importantly, if you don't exercise, it's not necessarily going to impact your health. Yeah. So, great. It's probably better to maybe be just slightly overweight, whatever that means, and exercise than underweight and not exercise.
Yeah, good advice. Yeah, you can't out-train a bad diet, as they say, but at the same time, you can't get fitter no matter how much healthy food you eat. Yeah, bang on. And then the last page, I think. Oh yeah, this is my favourite slide. This one, I really like this one.
So this looks at your battery levels over the 4 days. Again, just try and explain this. This wiggly line always starts in the midpoint of the y-axis. It will go down when the person's in the red colour or the blue colour, and it will come back up when the person's in the green colour. And we're basically just looking to see where your battery levels are. So on day 1, your batteries dropped down only a little bit. You had again more coaching in the morning there. You slept really well, so you're in positive territory. Day 2, again, positive territory. Day 3, the line's gone down a little bit more, bathroom antics, but again, your recovery is really good. Mm-hmm. And Sunday. So this is what we would call the opposite to the dripping tap, whatever the opposite of a dripping tap is, but it's a really positive response. Sometimes we see people, just coming back to bang on to where they started, i.e. on the dotted line on the right. Yeah. Sometimes we might see people in negative territory down here. And when we see people in negative territory, we're trying to understand, is it due to a lack of recovery, or is it due to excessive load during the day, or a combination of the two?
Yeah. And I suppose once you have that, that would probably, I would imagine that would tie in with how a person's feeling if they're depleting the battery levels over the course of just a few days. I mean, you must notice that, presumably, if and when that happens. And so tying the data to be able to see this is actually what's happening. Do you find that helps people, almost like shakes them and says, look, you've got to make some changes here, because if you keep going like this, you're just going to be, you're heading for burnout. Is that normally enough to get them to make some behavior changes?
I think the data is really powerful because it is them. This is no one else. Isn't me giving someone a leaflet saying eat an apple a day or whatever else. This is you.
Yeah.
What you want to take away with it, you take away with it. And, it's also ties in with your goal setting. But I think the really interesting one is people are quite good at seeing when they've had a really rubbish day. They wake up the next day, gee, I've had a really rubbish 24 hours. Where people are not so good is when they just see, when they're just going down a little bit every day, drip, 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 drip. And they just don't quite get it, that their batteries are just slowly leaking and depleting. And that's when you have some really interesting conversations and make some tweaks to people's sort of lifestyle strategies.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And it's great to see, I'm as we said in that first slide there, my sleep is really good. It is something I prioritize, and that evening routine is really, really important to me to make sure that happens. And to then not only see that, yep, that's great, you're sleeping well, to have that box ticked, but to see the accumulative effect of that as well. And then to compare that to what a lot of people experience, which is the opposite of this gradual depletion, where they maybe get a little bit of the recovery at night time, but smashing through tough days, and that recovery not being enough to bring them back up to that baseline. So you get this gradual depletion over a period of time. So that's absolutely fascinating. I know you've done many of these over the years, you and your team, Simon. So you must see general trends, you must see patterns, you must see probably people with similar data responses to me, and people who have this drip and tap effect. How helpful is it to you and the feedback you're able to give to have those thousands, hundreds of thousands of data points to work off?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting looking at individual data. It's interesting looking at broad picture data. I mean, just to give you an example, we analysed over 20,000 days of data last year. Wow. And when we aggregated it, we came to a pretty robust conclusion that the toughest day of the week for UK PLC was Saturday. So again, just a basic learning point for the general population. How good are you at recharging your batteries when you get the opportunity to recharge the batteries? Not so good. And then at individual level, you never know what you're going to see or the conversations you have. And it's fascinating because sometimes it is really obvious, people aren't exercising, or their eating, habits are not great, or they're not hydrating well. But it's also interesting in the mental health side of things, and mindset, and that approach to performance, and one's attitude to being a human being, not just a human doing, because it will be picked up physiologically. Yeah.
Well, as I said, I've been fascinated by the data, and some really interesting points there. In particular, for me, the things that I've taken away personally. First of all, keep prioritising the sleep, keep working that evening routine, because it is something that's working for me. Secondly, make sure the kids never come into the room at night and wake me up. I'm not sure that's going to ever be a possibility. And thirdly, with this thing about the weekends, he said there about kind of Saturdays for UK PLC being the most difficult day of the week. And a lot of that is because of the lack of structure. So for me to actually get some of that, I think normally I'm pretty good at the weekends with doing things that do get me, at least for some periods of time, into that real recovery recharge state. But also making sure I'm getting good chunks of that during the day, Monday to Friday, as well as Saturday to Sunday. So they were kind of my big takeaways from all of this. So thank you so much for taking the time to go through that with me and to interpret the numbers.
Absolute pleasure.
Brilliant. Cheers, and Simon. Speak soon.
Cheerio. Bye.